Hi everybody, my name is Dr. Sophie Horton. I'm the Principal Clinical Psychologist for Care for Children at Oldham Camps, and I'm going to talk to you about these attachment slides today. So the aim of this video is to give you a brief introduction to what attachment is and why it's important. So all babies are born with innate needs for attachment and exploration. Unlike other animals, human babies are born relatively underdeveloped and without the ability to survive on their own. So this means they're really relying on others to meet all their basic and even more complex needs. So the need to form an attachment or bond with a key person in their life is therefore crucial for their survival. So babies are born seeking this attachment and closeness to others, which is usually primarily with their mother. And the way a caregiver responds to an infant's needs determines whether a child forms a secure or an insecure attachment, with those who have experienced an attuned caregiver, so that's someone who's able to pick up on their cues and respond accordingly, being more likely to develop a secure attachment. This is when children feel able to explore the world within that attachment bond, and that's what we call their stable base. Now, without that stable base, it's really difficult for children to develop to their full potential, because it's kind of like trying to build the top of a house without having the foundation first. Children need that safe and secure, stable base to feel like they can explore the world more. So early relationship experiences are really essential for later development. These very early attachment experiences provide children with the basis for understanding that they can influence other people, which is the beginning of autonomy, and they can be influenced by others, which is the basis for the development of reciprocal relationships, that to and fro, where it's an equal kind of dance. And this also forms the basis for self-regulation, which is first through co-regulation, so somebody doing it with them, and it's also really important for developing a sense of identity. So attachment experience leads to the development of an internal working model. So this is kind of like a template of how relationships work and how children see themselves and what they see their places in the world. And that template will influence how they react and respond in later relationships. Okay, so there are different types of attachment, but it's really important to note that we all have attachments and we can have different ones with different people. Recognising the general types of attachment is useful to inform our thinking, but that has to be part of a bigger holistic formulation. It's not to be thought of kind of individually or deterministically. So if you don't have a secure attachment, this doesn't mean that you're not resilient and you're not going to be successful in life and the relationships that you might have later down the line. In this sense, attachment theory can be seen as a deficit-based theory because it talks about the long-lasting negative impact of experiences early in life. And it's really important to remember that difficult experiences don't define people, and many people who have experienced attachment difficulties or adversity do have a wealth of strengths and they can lead successful adult lives. So in attachment theory, there's generally two main styles of attachment, and that's being secure or insecure attachment. And within insecure attachment, there are kind of three main types or styles that we might see. So this is ambivalent, or what's sometimes called anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and disorganized attachment. So in secure attachment, the child moves between seeking comfort and exploring because they feel secure in their caregiver being attuned to their needs and responding to meet those needs. The child is confident expressing their needs and doesn't need to hide them. And this child develops an internal working model of themselves as effective, worthwhile and lovable, and others being loving, supportive and protective. And within this internal working model, the child builds resilience, which supports future relationship success and their ability to manage adversity. On the other hand, you have children who don't experience a secure attachment, and these children will develop patterns of relating, which is adapted to their anticipated parent or carer being unavailable. And these children miscue parents or carers as to their attachment needs by displaying attention-needing behaviours or self-reliant behaviours. And they behave in ways which maximise the chance that parents will be available when needed. And those strategies are developed based on their earlier experiences. In contrast, we then have disorganised attachment, and this is when a child's experienced a loss of the ability to feel soothed or comforted by a parent because they expect parents will be frightening. And these children make efforts to take control to reduce their fear. And unfortunately, when this doesn't work, their behaviour becomes highly stressed, dysregulated and/or dissociated. And this obviously affects their ongoing relationship with others, because these children will avoid those connections to other people, which makes them feel unsafe, so they have more controlling behaviour, which further pushes other people away unintentionally. And it's really important to know about these styles and these patterns because they are powerful, and as parents or carers or workers, we can get pulled into attachment patterns if we don't gently challenge to meet the hidden need of the child as well as the express need that they're outwardly displaying for us. Okay, so what does attachment influence then? Now, this slide is an oversimplified view because we don't have time to go into the in-depth science behind it, but studies do show that early attachment has an impact on an infant's brain development. So it makes sense then that this then impacts a vast array of areas for a child. Now, attachment we know has an influence on emotion regulation because children do not naturally know how to manage their emotions. Babies are not born knowing how to do that, they need help. You know, they first learn about emotions, what they are and what to do with them from the experience of someone else regulating for them and then supporting them to regulate. You know, that's what we call co-regulation. And if a child has not had these experiences, they'll find emotions quite overwhelming and find ways to survive them and manage that might not fit with kind of societal norms in terms of healthy ways to manage emotions. Attachment also influences social development and emotional intelligence in much the same way and can have an impact on how children manage peer and later relationships and their ways of relating to other people. And that's because attachment helps children to form a bit of a template, a blueprint for what relationships are like and what you do within these. And if a child's had a negative attachment experience, they may well have formed patterns of relating to others, which help them to survive at the time, but it might not be helpful further down the line and actually might reinforce previous negative relational patterns. But you can see how these experiences might lend a child to go on to experiencing further trauma due to the risk of these patterns of relating, what they could put them at risk of. So they might be more vulnerable to exploitation due to their way of understanding relationships and how they've learnt to get their needs met. Children who have experienced challenging attachment experiences may struggle to recognise and form healthy relationships even well into adulthood. And that can lead to an ongoing cycle of trauma and abuse, which we can see continuing across generations. The way we are parented influences how we parent our children, and if you haven't had any positive experiences or been able to work through attachment difficulties, you're more likely to continue or fall into what you know, and that might not be a conscious thing at times for some parents. We know that attachment can influence academic attainment at school, and it can lend children to display signs or symptoms which are often associated with autism or ADHD. It can be really difficult to tease apart whether a child's presentation is down to attachment trauma, ADHD, autism, or a combination of all of those things. Attachment also influences how people interact with the world based on those internal working models of themselves, other people and the world. These templates influence how we react to everyday events and what we understand about what's going on. And this can lead to ways of managing in terms of becoming overly self-reliant and not accepting others can help us, or the other extreme of needing so much support and time from others that to feel like we can do anything. Attachment experiences early in life start through play, and play is key in a child's development and should be seen as the main way infants and children explore the world and learn. So in this sense, if a child has not had the experience of someone showing them how to play, they might lack play skills, which further impacts their development because you've got to go through the stages of development. If you haven't got that foundation, it's really difficult to move on to the next step. Attachment is also really important for the development of empathy. So that's through the experience of empathy ourselves. That's the only way we know how to then apply it to others. And obviously this is not an exhaustive list of how attachment impacts infants well into adulthood, but it's important to remember that, it is useful to think about, but attachment theory shouldn't be considered on its own, and it's not deterministic in the sense that if you have X attachment style, X will definitely happen. There are ways people develop to cope with insecure attachments, and these people go on to lead healthy, successful and fulfilling lives. And also those with secure attachments can struggle in various things as well.